Well, good evening and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ+ daily evening television news. We're broadcasting live and then available on demand. We are also available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV, and of course, YouTube and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Wednesday, November 9, 2022, and we are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Well, I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and this evening we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ+ community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ+ evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ+ news, you will see it and hear it.
Happening Out Television Network is a 501c3 nonprofit media platform in the television and radio model of PBS and NPR, but designed for our LGBTQ+ community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ+ media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 37 years of the LGBTQ+ experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ+ and broader community.
Well, let's begin by welcoming anchor Jamaal L. Starks. Jamaal is a rare Miami native, also known affectionately as Porcelain. As a spiritual wellness consultant, he is an active member of the yogi community through the first and only queer yoga club in Miami. He is positioned as the vice president of Impulse Chapter Miami and a member of the ballroom community through the House of Gorgeous Gucci, a professional background boasting a 16-year aviation career that led him to oversee the flight operations of 2 major airlines and a 17-year HIV+ thriver. He's dedicated himself to lead by example for Black queer individuals, showing that they are inherently worthy of living safe, healthy, and abundantly thriving lives with social conditioning. Welcome, Jamaal.
Thank you, Al. Let's welcome our anchor, Glen Weinzimer. Glen is the founder of the Smart Ride, an annual 2-day, 165-mile bicycle ride from Miami to Key West. The Smart Ride has raised and returned over $13.9 million to AIDS and HIV service organizations across Florida in the last 18 years. Glen also owns Bona Italian restaurant in the heart of Wilton Manors. Bona Italia holds weekly Give Back Mondays. In the past 4.5 years, Bona has raised and returned over $50,000 to help local organizations meet their mission. Welcome and thank you, Glen, for all of your contributions.
Thank you, Jamaal, and congratulations on, was it 18 years?
Well, it'll be 18 years in February.
And that's a rough battle to have to overcome. So that's awesome. Let's welcome anchor Bobby Huen. Bobby is the owner and principal mediator of BH Conflict Resolution Services. That's a mouthful. As a certified civil and family mediator, Bobby helps individuals, families, and businesses resolve their legal disputes nationwide. Outside of work, Bobby is a gamer, a Lego builder, a foodie, and an art collector. He's always open to chat if you see him on the drive. Welcome, Bobby.
Thank you, Glenn. And now let's welcome anchor AJ Stone. AJ is a foodie, a comedy writer, and a social media slut, and a co-founder of bearslooking.com. He may be big and burly, but don't be fooled. He is a softie and a goody two-shoes. Find him online at Bear with AJ. Good evening, AJ.
Good evening, everyone. Glenn, where's that mouthful? I love a good mouthful.
I bet you do.
Who's got it? We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Wednesday, November 9th, 2022.
Well, we're going to begin Queer News Tonight with queering up politics. Senate is expected to pass same-sex marriage before end of the year. The Senate is expected to pass the Respect for Marriage Act before the end of the year, which would require states to recognize same-sex unions if the Supreme Court strikes down marriage rights. A person close to negotiations said, quote, "We're confident that we'll have the votes when it comes to the floor. We've been guaranteed that this is going to come up before January," end quote. Democrats had the opportunity to bring the bill to the floor before the August recess, but delayed it, giving bipartisan negotiations an opportunity to continue instead of taking it directly to voters, who polls show strongly support marriage equality. The latest version of the bill clarifies religious liberties and includes language that reaffirms the bill does not validate polygamy, which some Republican members had expressed concerns about. The bill has bipartisan appeal and passed the House in July with the support of 47 Republicans. It's unclear how it would be put forth for final passage, either as a standalone or attached to a larger must-pass bill. Supporters are reluctant to draw too much attention to talks with the midterms still raging, but expectations are high that it has the votes to pass. Sources tell the timing will depend on the midterm elections and its outcomes. Exciting news. I was very excited about this 2 months ago, but what we have watched leading up into the final days of the midterms, I'm concerned with what's in front of us now, but hopes of best hopes. In the next 5 to 6 weeks, we're going to see Respect for Marriage pass in this.
What a change for our government. I don't think this 10 years ago or 5 years ago would even made it to the point of a real discussion. And I think it's interesting that they agree with it, but they don't want to get backlash. So we're just not going to talk about it. We're going to go negotiate privately, and then we're going to vote on it.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty telling story right there in itself, because the Republicans, or those against LGBTQ rights, are the first ones to come out screaming and get a big, get their podium out there and start yelling why we're so against everything that's normal.
Yeah, I think the problem is, and I'm not trying to pull a Debbie Downer here, is
But you just did.
Well, yeah, I did. But the thing is, I wonder if I'm skeptical of that we can find 10 Republican senators, depends on, the lame duck session, 50 Democrats, including Vice President Harris, and then you have to find 10 more in order to avoid a filibuster. And I'm not quite sure if we have that. I think there are people, I think it is like Lucy offering the ball to
We
Charlie
don't know
Brown.
the details, but I suspect behind the scenes, Mitch McConnell has made an agreement that there's not going to be a filibuster.
And then they renege on it. They can simply just pull the football.
And this is usually my problem with Democrats, is that they don't really stand in their, they had the chance to bring it to voters. And we already covered a story where we had evangelicals who are 55% in favor of gay marriage. So you might as well have given it to the voters. But now we've delayed it so that we can continually talk across the room. Who wants to talk to these people? I don't get it.
It's wasting time at that point.
Right, exactly. Well, let's queer up trans rights. Appeals court rules Miss USA pageant can exclude trans contestants. The Miss United States of America pageant can prevent trans women from participating in the competition, a federal court ruled this week. The ruling by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 9th District came in response to a lawsuit brought by Miss Oregon, hopeful and openly transgender woman Anita Green. She sued the Miss USA organization after she was not allowed to participate in the Miss Oregon beauty pageant, even though the pageant itself asked her to take part in the contest. She initially sued Miss USA in 2019, but the U.S. District Court for the District of Oregon dismissed the case, leading her to pursue an appeal. Green brought the lawsuit on the grounds that the pageant's rule to only allow natural-born female contestants was in violation of Oregon Public Accommodations Act, OPA, which advocates for equal rights for every person regardless of belief, background, or identity. Miss USA did not disagree that it must abide by OPA, but it argued that this is within its First Amendment rights to reject a particular contestant. The appellate court Wednesday released its 106-page opinion. It agreed with Miss USA's lawyers that the First Amendment protected the organization's, quote, expressive association rights to exclude a person who would impact the group's ability to express its views, end quote. And what I have to say to Miss Oregon, talk to your girlfriend, Miss Tran, Miss Chakrapong, and
what do you do to overcome Miss Oregon and Miss Universe? The billionaire in Thailand just buys the entire thing.
Yes.
Who is trans.
Who is trans.
Yeah, this is probably not going to stand for very long.
I don't know. Is there two? I remember distinctly when I was growing up, there's two, right? There's like Miss America and then there's Miss USA. Is it like
yeah, so this,
on one of them.
Miss America, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Miss USA, who has been bought by a billionaire trans gendered person in Thailand.
In Thailand.
So, for $20 million. So Miss Oregon and Miss USA, get ready.
They went that cheap, $20 million? That's
$20 million. Well, Donald Trump had run it into the ground.
A couple more lawsuits,
as usual.
and Miss Oregon can buy it herself.
And Miss Puerto Rico and Miss, I think, Argentina just got married. Yeah.
Good for them.
Remember that.
All right, let's queer up courts. Georgia man who won Supreme Court gay rights case agrees to $825,000 settlement. A Georgia county has agreed to settle a lawsuit brought by a man whose case was one of three that led to a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that said civil rights laws protects gay, lesbian, and transgender people from discrimination in employment. The Clayton County Board of Commissioners this week approved an $825,000 settlement for Gerald Lynn Bostock. Bostock had sued the county, which sits just south of Atlanta, saying he was fired in 2013 because he is gay. During the news conference on Friday, Bostock said, quote, "I am filled with joy and words can hardly express how happy I am that this is now over," end quote. His case was one of three decided by the Supreme Court in June 2020 in a ruling that said a key part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, known as Title VII, bars job discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. Bostock and his lawyers stressed that he didn't go looking to be the face of this fight, but that he was willing to stand up and see it through. Attorney Tom Mew said, quote, "For a case that started out about what happened to Gerald, the individual, and us trying to make that right, it certainly became much bigger than that," end quote. He also gave credit to Donald Zarda and Amy Stevens, the plaintiffs in the other two cases that prompted the Supreme Court decision. It's a pretty big deal.
Bostock is a name over the course of the next 50 years. That will be in the legacy of, if there are 20 names in LGBT history, when we celebrate in October LGBT History Month, Bostock's name is going to be one of the names that appears. Yeah.
Alongside Obergefell, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
Right. Lawrence versus Texas. But the thing is, as a professional mediator, I'm actually surprised how long it took for the settlements to come across. When the decision handed down, the county basically have no room to, no
we're talking
leg to stand.
Georgia.
But still, I mean, there's no point in delaying the proceedings. It's just additional cost and pain to both all parties.
We are
involved.
literally talking about Atlanta, Georgia, where I lived for 5 years, and I refuse to with the large gay population it's so ass backwards. I mean, for heaven's sake, they have Herschel Walker.
You should move to Florida. You should see what's going on down there.
Right.
Oh, God. God help us. Why do we live here again? All right. Next up, we queer up the USA view. West Hollywood may show us what's next for America's Gayborhood. John Duran is styling himself as a law and order candidate for West Hollywood City Council, posing in front of sheriff's cruisers on his campaign website and touting his endorsement by the deputies union. It's stark contrast from the Duran of the early 90s when, as a 30-something activist attorney, he helped sue the LA County Sheriff's Department for alleged discrimination against a gay deputy and for withholding medication from a gay jail inmate with AIDS. Duran, now 63, spent 2 decades on the West Hollywood City Council and is now considered part of the political old guard of this famously liberal, famously gay city. As many younger residents embrace a brand of progressivism far to the left of its founding fathers, Duran and 2 other former councilmen are hoping to recapture their seats and influence a council they say has veered too far to the left because of its economic policies and decision to scale back sheriff staffing. In 2020, the balance of power shifted in city council. John Haleman, who had been on the council since the city's founding, lost the at-large seats to 2 younger, more liberal candidates. 12 people are competing for the 3 at-large seats held by Mayor Lauren Meister, Lindsay Horvath, and John D'Amico. Ben Savage, the actor best known for his role in Boy Meets World, is another political newcomer aiming to join the council. Wait, is Ben telling us something that we don't know?
No.
No. But anyway, so, I mean, West Hollywood, it's essentially Wilton Manors and West Hollywood are kind of mirror images. 2 coastal cities, both have a very gay city council, have a huge gay population. And I'm wondering, maybe, is the old left the new right now?
It's interesting the immediate observation you make, but there's dramatic differences. West Hollywood is in California. Wilton Manors in Fort Lauderdale is in Florida.
That's true.
One of the things that we see in Florida, which makes Florida a purple state, is seniors. So no matter where you are in your young days, no matter how much pot you smoke, no matter how much sex you have, you get to a point where you eventually move to the villages. And when you move to the villages, your politics moves dramatically to the right. That's what's so interesting about this story. What is happening in West Hollywood, which is unusual for California, is these very progressive views 30 years ago when he was 30 years younger or 40 years younger, is now going, wait, I'm 62 or I'm 64 or I'm 70 years old and my politics have moved to the right. And now I'm calling progressives radicals. What's interesting to me about this story is in the LGBTQ community in West Hollywood, they're going through exactly in the LGBTQ community what we go through here in Florida with seniors. That's why seniors are so fundamentally important in Florida. That's the first point. Then the second point is what's interesting about West Hollywood is, are we starting to go through the same thing? Because as Wilton Manors and Central Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, more and more LGBT older people in their 50s and 60s retire here, will our politics move to the right? Very likely they will. And as a result, West Hollywood and Wilton Manors and Fort Lauderdale are challenged by the same thing, which is we're not New Yorkers anymore. We have a different perspective. And so therefore, we don't want AOCs. And that's what's interesting of what's going on in West Hollywood.
Fundamentally, all politics is local. So you, city council, starting from city council and going up, all the representatives people elect reflects the desires of the constituency. Not the national party's trends. For example, AOC doesn't speak for the rest of the Democratic Party any more than Marjorie Taylor Greene speaks for the entire GOP.
And in the story, just out of curiosity, because I didn't get it, are we finding that older people are becoming more conservative or more radically conservative? Because I can see as you get older, some of your views on economics and things get a little bit more conservative. But are we talking about social issues as well as...
If you look in Florida, if you look at the villages, for example, acceptance of LGBT community, gay marriage, etc. If you're a Gen Zer, it's in the mid 90 percentile of acceptance.
Right.
Every generational age group that you move up, the number goes down. The lowest number is my number, your number. Baby boomers have the lowest acceptance of LGBT because we grew up in an era that ultimately doesn't change significantly. So the answer to your question is, well, just depends on what seat you sit. It's right or radical right. It really, a Gen Zer would say, you're radical.
Right. It's the same thing.
But it's the exact same thing. And one other interesting issue to me about Wilton Manors, we've just gone through this election of the city council. I agree with you. Wilton Manors, Fort Lauderdale, Central Broward County, because it really includes Oakland Park and other communities.
Victoria Park.
Central Broward County is West Hollywood. We have a city commission election that just took place. I was on the interview panel for the candidates for Wilton City Commission and the mayors. There's no one that is under 50 years old. There's no female. There's not a single woman. There's no black people. There's no trans people.
It's a good old white boys club. We sat there and watched.
Right. Yeah. It's Glenn and Al on the city commission.
Which is scary on any commission.
And at the end of the day, I'm not criticizing them in any stretch. They're great for our community. But West Hollywood is challenging this idea that it's always going to be the same way that it's been.
Right.
We're not always going to be Greenwich Village, and we're not always going to be the Castro, because as you get older and seniors begun to become the dominant voice, we veer to the right, not veer to the left. That's what this progressives word is blowing a dog whistle on. Oh no! And they're waving their bony queer finger at me by telling me what's going on in West Hollywood. It's interesting.
Let's go ahead and queer up gay culture. New survey shows married same-sex couples deal with stress better. A study from researchers at the University of Texas at Austin, published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, found some important differences in how same-sex and opposite-sex couples deal with stress. Although stress is common in all sorts of marriages, researchers found that same-sex married couples, because they are generally more collaborative than their opposite-sex counterparts, are able to deal with stress better together. There were 419 couples who answered a survey on dyadic or paired coping, and the analysis revealed the differences. Researchers have concluded this comes from a link between gender and coping strategies. The study author, Yi-Wen Yang, said, quote, "This research shows that while there are some gender differences in dyadic coping efforts, the effects of supportive and collaborative dyadic coping, as well as of the negative dyadic coping on marital quality, are the same for all couples. Our findings also emphasize the importance of coping as a couple for marital quality across different relationship contexts, which can be an avenue through which couples work together to strengthen relationship well-being," end quote. Wang theorizes the reason both male and female same-sex couples work better collaboratively stems from similarities in stress response, as well as shared experiences that are gender specific. I mean, this makes sense to me because I know what his problem is. I know what's bugging him because it's probably the same thing that's bugging me. I know that's not true for all relationships, but hopefully we're a little bit more relatable in some ways.
Is it just me, and given the balance, I'll take the stress? Is it just me?
Did you ever think that you would say that word whatever it was. And the rest of your life, I bet it never comes up
My
again.
tongue has been twisting more on this show.
Sciatic.
What?
That paragraph has a lot of academic, what I would call academic language. Trust me, I read those reports.
Do we agree with the conclusion? That,
I do.
Do you think so?
I think so.
So I tell my sister all the time, I say, there's a reason why I'm gay.
Well,
and she
So
really
you're right
agrees
there with
me.
me. You'll take the stress.
I'll take it.
would the name of the book be Men Are From Mars, Men Are From Mars?
Yeah.
I mean, if we're from the same planet, shouldn't we be able to relate to each other a little bit?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think so.
Again, one more time.
Yeah.
If it was a question of he and I,
He has a name.
I'll take I'll take the stress.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
clear up sports. History as a gay race car driver, Zach Herrin makes NASCAR debut. Gay motorsports, that's generally not a word combination you hear much of. Racer Zach Herrin made his long-awaited debut in a NASCAR-affiliated race in Phoenix last week, but did so on his own terms. When the green flag dropped to start the ARCA Menard Series race at Phoenix Raceway, Herrin was in the 25th position off the pole. Wait. Oh, we're still trying
pole.
to.
It says pole.
It was a big step forward for the 26-year-old who only recently returned to the sport he loves following a 10-year hiatus. As he told Outsports, love that outlet, he made his NASCAR debut as an out gay man. Herrin has been racing most of his life, first starting with motorcycles at the age of 5. By the age of 16, he was racing professionally in the hyper-masculine and very dangerous motorsports category. But being a closeted male in a hyper-masculine world of racing proved too much for him. He soon realized he could no longer safely race from within the closet, and rather than risk his life, he left his lifelong dream of competing in a NASCAR event and retired what he now says was premature. However, Herrin accepted his identity and later came out, first to his family and then publicly. He returned to racing as well, but finding sponsors as a gay man in an expensive sport proved very difficult. Eventually, Rebuy Engine and Quick Quack Car Wash signed on, and Herrin was able to race again. I applaud him because anytime LGBT can break new ground, that is an accomplishment that helps propel our entire LGBTQ forward. And Herrin does that because NASCAR and gay does not naturally go together. I do applaud NASCAR because events all over the country are beginning to have the LGBT day in NASCAR, and you get all of the Bubbas and the Trump and the Bud drinkers going, what the hell are we doing? Celebrating LGBT, and NASCAR is pushing it forward, which I applaud them.
What I find most amazing is that he decided to retire at the age of 16, and 10 years later, he's 26 now.
Right.
And like at 16, you give up your career. I don't think you know what you want to do at 16.
Right, exactly.
For your career.
And I'm happy for him because could you imagine racing at such a dangerous sport and then your life ending without anybody knowing your true self, your true authentic self?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's expensive, but NASCAR has been trying to rehab their image. Like in the last several years, they had already banned Confederate flag displays. They banned certain things. It didn't help the "Let's Go Brandon" thing started out as a NASCAR joke, a NASCAR meme, but it wasn't their organization's intention to project an anti-LGBT.
But it's like most of society is slowly adjusting and accepting and opening
we
up
have
to
to
it.
forgive too. You know, at the end of the day, we have to go. Yes, you have Confederate flags, and you didn't embrace black people, and you didn't embrace gay people, and you don't embrace women, and you do embrace Donald Trump. Eventually, we have to say, okay, all of those are facts, but we're beginning to forgive you. Let's lead by example.
Oh, I love the grace. Let's clear up entertainment. Jeopardy trans super champion Amy Schneider returns for Tournament of Champions. Jeopardy superstar and trans activist Amy Schneider made her heavily anticipated return to the show in this year's Jeopardy Tournament of Champions. The tournament began last week, but Schneider, along with fellow Jeopardy record breakers Matt Amodio and Mateo Roach, has been pre-qualified, if you will, to skip the quarterfinals and proceed directly to the semifinals. Schneider made her first appearance on last night's episode of Jeopardy, where unfortunately she did not guess the correct question on Final Jeopardy. Schneider, a 43-year-old Dayton, Ohio native, racked up the second longest winning streak in the game show's history. She won 40 games, making her second only to current host Ken Jennings, 74, and became first woman to earn over $1 million, as well as the first trans woman to make it to the Tournament of Champions. She has since become so famous, she quit her job and signed with an agent. Schneider spent some of her $1.3 million winnings on an engagement ring for her wife, Genevieve Davis, and spent some time traveling as well. To bring greater visibility to trans people, she will also continue to speak on the issues facing the trans community. Schneider has appeared in many pride parades and celebrations this year, and she picked up a GLAAD Special Recognition honor for her performance on Jeopardy! I love Amy. I love this. I love this. I'm sad that she didn't make it past the final round, but I also want to be her wife where she spent some of that money on that engagement.
You know, one of the interesting things that we don't say in the story that you may not be aware of, they're getting ready to announce it, but she made the very prestigious Out 100 for 2022. So we congratulate her for that. And her visibility for the trans community is completely different than an entertainment personality, an actress or actor, etc. The smartness of her represents the trans community and the entire LGBTQ community.
In a beautiful way.
In a beautiful way, absolutely.
It's fantastic. Well, thank you, Jamaal. So next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent sets here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m. with more than 30,000 watching every week.
I'm CJ Walden, Vice President of Prism FL Inc., and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
That is today's news for the LGBTQ+ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ+ evening news show. Is our community important to you?
I think it is. Then help us by liking and subscribing. Ring the bell for updates. Share this news with your friends and family.
Post this broadcast in many groups you are a member of. Tonight's story about our communities deserve the attention of your family and friends.
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ+ digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
And Jamaal, you're going to help me with your teleprompter because mine is not working. So if our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. This is the only place in the world that tells these LGBTQ+ stories in motion and sound. And that is the passion of the Happening Out Television Network and Queer News Tonight. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ+ reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Jamaal Starks, Glen Weinzimer, Dr. Bobby Huen, and AJ Stone. We will see you daily at 8 p.m.
Good.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader